Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. So I have been reading a lot more horror prose the past few years, and I'm very lucky that I get a chance to check out things early. One of these books is called Maeve Fly by CJ Leede. This book follows a young woman who abandons her detached personality in exchange for something much darker that's inspired by the pages of American Psycho. Set against the neon-drenched Sunset Strip that is a character all on its own, Maeve Fly has just had me by the throat since I started reading it, with some of the best description, violence, and a certain happiest place on earth. Today, I am joined by CJ Leede to talk about it. How are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
I'm very excited that you are here. I was telling you beforehand I have not finished yet because I don't want to, because then it'll be over. But the book comes out on June 6th.
June 6th. Yes. It's 6/6. So
perfect.
Easy to remember.
Day. Yes. Just a couple of years off.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much you looked into me, but I am a hard-hitting journalist. So I always start off every interview with something that really catches people off guard because it's going to take a lot out of you to answer this. So
great.
I hope you're prepared. What's your favorite sandwich?
Whoa, what a question. I don't know if I have one, but I'm like a pickle fiend. So literally anything with a ton of pickles and I'm super happy.
I've never heard someone refer to themselves as a pickle fiend.
Oh yeah, I'm like a pickle juice drinker. Like I 3 times a day pickles. Not really, but a lot.
Yeah. Okay, then I have to dig deeper in that. What type of pickle? Like, what is your go-to? Like, what is your fridge filled with?
I mean, okay, so I've tried pretty much every grocery store pickle and like farmer's market pickle I can find. And I think, like, I gotta say, I think I'm a Clausen bitch. I think they're just like, they put a lot of salt, which I love. And it's like, there's nothing fussy about it. It's just like, you get what you get. So
Clausen bitch is a strong start to an interview. Now, this is like your horror debut.
Yes.
Now, I assume everyone's asking you like what your horror origins is and all that bullshit. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care. What I want to know about you is what horror sequence has stuck with you the longest?
Wow. I mean, these are incredible questions. Do you, in terms of like literature or movies, or you don't care?
Anything. If I haven't seen it, I'm going to, or read it or anything. I want to know what, like.
Oh, you know what? I in fact, I don't even know why I asked that, because I totally have it. When I was a kid, I grew up very Catholic, and nice. My mom was watching The Exorcist, and I would like sneak behind the couch and always watch what she was watching. And Linda Blair vomiting, truly, like, I probably think about it like 4 times a year at least. It really still deeply upsets me. That movie doesn't get less scary to me. I know other adults are like, no, it's not that bad, but I'm like, that's fucking terrifying. It's so good.
It's so scary because like it's a kid too. It's like, it's not
that's
like
what it is.
Kids are scary as fuck, just in general. In all horror, kids are scary. And especially when you put a demon in one.
Yeah.
So, as a writer, the way you describe things in here has often left me smiling and honestly laughing. There was something about a thong of a derriere. Just the way you described it was like, that's fucking hilarious. Now, I did have to pause and read one of the sequences out loud about an egg to my partner. It was one of those ones I was sitting on the balcony earlier and I got to that part and I had to stand up, walk inside and be like, hey, I need to read something to you. And she's like, why did you come inside to tell me that? I went, I don't know. I just thought you'd enjoy it. So as an author, there's these different phrases and some people have different words. I'm curious where you get your words for your writing. Like, are there ever phrases you see in everyday life that you jot down, or how do you collect the things you're putting into your work?
For sure. I would say all the time when I'm speaking to people, if they say anything like even halfway intriguing, I'm like repeating that line in my head until I have a moment to go write it down. And in fact, my boyfriend and I are both writers, and we were just talking about this at a party, but like if we ever, like if somebody says something really great, we always have that pause moment and we look at each other and we'll be like, dibs.
Well, at least you have the dibs and you're not fighting over the words.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when I started interviewing, I started with comics. So the way you get a lot of impact in a comic is the page turn. Prose doesn't really have that, but you do have chapters. So I've always been super curious how you decide to cut off your chapters. What do you think makes it most impactful to end on a certain point or let it go on?
That's pretty interesting. I've been thinking about this lately. I actually think moving forward, I'm going to cut chapters off sooner even. I like leaving people hanging. But I think that, you know, typically there are like one or two things that I need to say in a chapter or that I need the characters to do or feel or find. And once that's done, it's like, why fuck around, you know?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's interesting how you cut it off. I keep staring at the cover. Did you have input on what the cover was, or did you get to pick art that you liked or things like that?
It was a really cool process. There was a painter, Carly Janine Mazur, I believe is how you say her name. And she is super cool. And somebody on the Nightfire design team had wanted to work with her forever and was like, you know what? I think this might actually be the book. And she like makes creepy dolls for fun on the side and does all these things. She's done like a few magic cards. And so we basically reached out to her, sent her the book. She read it and came up with 4 concepts. And then it was crazy. They were all really, really cool. And then we kind of picked this concept, and then we got to choose like, is it black on the bottom or is it red like blood spatter? And is the eye green or is it blue? And, you know, all these different aspects. And then she ended up like, it's an actual painting. It's incredible.
That is wild. That it's like completely inspired by the art itself.
Yeah.
Wow. It is one that like I can't stop looking at. And as we're talking, we're on Zoom, but it's not, people aren't going to see this. I keep looking at it because it's enthralling. Like you want to read this book, like not supposed to judge a book by a cover, whatever.
But really,
yeah. My brain is so smooth that like when I see a good looking book, I'm like, all right, I'll read that. Now, Maeve as a character is so interesting as our POV. She's got a lot going on, even when she feels detached. How do you work to develop your characters outside of the writing itself? Do you make playlists? Do you think of like what films they like, things like that? Like what goes into that process for you?
Definitely. I make Pinterest boards so I can have kind of visuals. I actually have gotten flagged on Pinterest a lot. They keep threatening to suspend my account for the things that I pin. I do playlists. I try to, you know, like without being a crazy person, you know, like I'll try to like go to my bookshelf and take a look and see like, I don't know, what would she pick out, and then see what I can find there and kind of like move through the world that way internally a bit.
Interesting. And if you got banned on Pinterest, that would be like a really cool author tag. Be like banned on Pinterest.
I think we're getting close, actually.
Yeah, so. Very, very hardcore. Now, the music thing is important because it does come up in the story quite a lot. And as someone who has the Monster Mash on their top 10 on Spotify every year, I have been enamored by all of the choices and the different things that pop up that I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't know anyone else knew these songs.
Oh man.
You refer to them as Halloween songs at one point, or Maeve does, you, whoever. For you, what makes a good Halloween song?
Great question. I think that a good Halloween song has to have that kind of like slinky, sexiness, but also has to be just as goofy and campy as possible. And if both can happen at once, and if you have like the humorous aspects, and if you've got like creaking door sounds, like it's perfect.
I like that. I like the cheapness of the creaking door sound. That's always
Totally.
It's such an easy bit. Now, in the story, you have Maeve embody one of the biggest princess on Disney's the Mouse's roster right now. And it feels like a really important choice. Why her instead of maybe one of the classic princesses or somebody else?
So, one answer to that is that I am not super well versed in this theme park canon, actually.
I love that.
I probably need a better education. Two, I always thought the old princesses were just kind of lame. Like, they don't really do anything. I'm not like unique in feeling this way. You know, it's like they just get married. That's that. Like, whatever. And three, I was visiting the theme park with my goddaughter, and we went to the wrong side of the park. We went to like the adult part. We meant to go to the part with like the castle and like the Haunted Mansion and all that. And we went to the other side, and there was like nothing we could do because it's all adult rides. And then there were these two princesses, and we waited for hours in line hearing the Snowman song over and over again. Which truly, I think I put it in the book, but like, the fact that anybody can listen to that. But I actually love I love the movie is the answer. I love that princess. And when I met those two princesses, I was like, oh, this is it. Like, it just clicked so quickly. That's like, oh, like this is Maeve and Kate. Like, this is them. And so, that was kind of that.
Interesting. And so, how often have you been to the park, like the park itself? Or is
Once
it just like
as an adult, and it was that time.
I love that because like the way you write about it is very not detached, but feels this is a consumer thing. Like, even though people love being there, like there's still that element.
Yeah, I will say, I've been to Harry Potter World like many times, not many, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times. But this theme park, I actually need to go back. I think that would be very fun in anticipation of the book.
Yeah, especially with book. I went there once last year. It was interesting because I'm used to the Florida one, but I was like, this is very different.
Was it like, were you happy with it, or was it a letdown?
We used to go a lot as children. So like, that's like burned into my brain. I'm not like a Disney adult, but when I walked into the park, I saw the castle and I was like, oh, that's it. Like, Walt couldn't make it any bigger. Like, this is your home, boy. Like, I gotta make it so small. It was interesting. The other side of the park feels like a Six Flags rather than a Disney thing.
Totally. And I was like, where am I? Because I loved growing up going to like the Haunted Mansion rocks, you know?
Like, I'm a big nerd. So I was like, I'm really excited to see the Marvel stuff. And I was like, this feels terrible. This is awful. But you know what? Not for me. It's for children. But
yes.
An important element of your book is California and the Sunset Strip. I got it on the third try directly. I was curious where your relationship started with that. Are you from California originally?
No. So I'm from, I was born here, but I lived in Austin, Texas until I was a teenager. And then I lived in Manhattan. And so I've got one parent in Texas, or 2 parents in Texas and 2 in New York that remarried. And so I moved here from New York with my boyfriend and dogs in 2019. And it was not very long before the pandemic started. And I totally panicked. And I was like, this was the worst move of my life. And this place sucks. And I was like having a like nightmare moment after like convincing my little family to move. So this book was me trying to get to know LA mostly from the inside of my car because COVID hit. and reading books about things and looking at just like the handful of things I could find. And actually, in the process of writing the book, I really did fall in love with LA. And now we've been here almost 4 years. And like, I can't really see us living elsewhere, at least not for a very, very long time. So it was an interesting thing.
That is super interesting. Like, you came from New York, which is also one of the most populated places, to LA. And I don't know exactly where, but you were doing it during COVID. Like, what was that like, experiencing those streets when it felt like ghost town everywhere? Because you always see those pictures of like nothing.
Yeah, well, it was weird. I mean, we live in the burbs, so like it was a little less weird. But I mean, frankly, like I was happy not to be in New York in the COVID sphere. But you know, that's a tough thing to be in a whatever studio apartment sometimes with somebody else. But yeah, it was really interesting. It totally did feel like a ghost town, but also because like just the layout of LA made no sense to me. And, you know, coming from New York, anywhere is kind of tough at first because you're just like, everything is different. So you definitely like have that, or I had a panic moment.
Yeah. Well, I was out there last year, and it was the first time I've ever been to a not East Coast city because I'm so used to Philly and New York. It was like, this is not at all like anything I've ever been. Like, it felt like, and you talk about it in the book, it felt like there's these long stretches of neighborhood before you get to anything else.
Yes.
And I was like, this is so interesting. Like, I love this kind of, it's all clashed together. And it's something that there is a conversation in the book about between Maeve and Gideon, where they talk about New York City versus LA, which is probably a thing that comes up often for people.
Yeah.
But Maeve goes on to talk about how every place has culture. Where did that come from for you? Like, she talks about like small, I loved the way it was all framed.
You know where that came from is that this is like actually in life. I hate that phrase. There's no culture here. And I was writing this book, and a family member, it was so bizarre. I actually took her to see this like small town near me and was excited to show my family and whatever. And she got out of the car and said, "There's no culture here." And it was just the most baffling thing to me. And I just really thought about it. And like, that's so much of this book. And like this, you know, Maeve as a character, like little things that were said or done or that I saw would just stick in my head, and I would think about them and turn them over and then be like, I just have to put it somewhere. And it got put here.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I keep saying Maeve, it's Maeve.
It's fine, whatever.
Now, it's interesting because horror isn't as big in cities, pretty much across like all pop culture. Like, we're only seeing it with Jason Goes to New York and like now Scream and things like that. For you, what tools does the city give you over a small town in horror storytelling?
Wow. I mean, that's a really interesting question. And you're so right? I mean, like, there's like endless possibilities to isolation.
Yeah.
And small town politics and all that. I mean, I think what cities give you is anonymity, and like, people are busy here, you know, like that theoretically people are busy. Like, even, you know, my cops are what they are in the book, but, you know, it's like they have things to do. Like, they're not like sitting on a street corner, like shooting the shit, or maybe they are, but, yeah, I don't know. I think it gives you that invisibility a bit that like you can't get in a more rural setting. But more than that, it gives you what I love, which is like many locations. I love a bar. I love, you know, any cool interior space, and you get a lot of those.
Yeah. And some of them are very cool. Are they? That's a question I have as someone who doesn't know this area. Are these places real, or have you made these up?
Jones is real.
Okay.
There are 2 bookstores on the Strip, one behind the other.
Because the bars sound really cool.
Yeah, like the Viper Room is real.
Yeah.
Rainbow, the Chateau, obviously, like those places. I think Sunset Tower's in there. But yeah, I mean, Django's I made up. The Tata Tiki Lounge I made up.
Oh, that's what I was hoping for. Sounds like a real nice place to be.
Somebody maybe will make it. Maybe we gotta get it going.
So with all of this, there is that element of Hollywood and the removal of humanity for some people who are there. There's a specific video that Maeve comes back to a couple times, which is Michael Jackson going to grocery shop for the first time. And like he's finding pure joy in doing the mundane when so many people don't. What about that made you want to put it in the text?
First of all, have you seen that video?
I didn't know it was real until you just confirmed it. So I now find it.
I don't know how I came across this. It was like in the middle or like in the peak of the pandemic when like I was not leaving the house, like whatever that was, March, April. And there was something about, it gets really gray here in late spring too. And like sitting inside watching this video, I just thought it was somehow like just the most upsetting, heartbreaking thing I'd ever seen. Obviously, Michael Jackson's very, there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. But just the idea that, anyone would be so excited for something that is so sort of everyday, is in its way kind of beautiful, but just really made me so deeply sad and lonely feeling. And I think I went down a very long rabbit hole of like, now that I'm remembering, is like many hours into the night of like finding all these videos spinning off of that. And it was a total trip.
It's playing in silence in the background, which is even weirder, not like knowing what's going on. It's so weird.
It's very weird. Very weird.
But yeah, it's lonely.
It's very lonely.
I'm going to be down a fucking rabbit hole now. Thanks. Now, American Psycho is super important to your book. What are your feelings about the modern interpretations of the story and like how it's been, I don't want to say taken or co-opted or anything like that by people in pop culture who like idolize Patrick?
Well, I think there are like so many really strong reactions to something like American Psycho. You do have the people who take it and they're like, oh, this is somebody we aspire to be. You do also have people who take it and say this entire book is a critique on capitalism and that's all that matters here. And then you have other people who say, the most common one is I just get people being like, oh, I can't watch that. I can't read that, but it is like, I think the thing about American Psycho and what has struck me so much about it, other than the fact that like, I love Brett's writing. I think he's like, it's just like, you can't read Rules of Attraction without just being like, oh my God, any of those books. Mm-hmm. But I think I love that it gets so many reactions and it gets many different kind of reactions, but they're all so strong. You can't bring up American Psycho without somebody jumping in with something that has emotion behind it. And I think that's pretty incredible, actually, for a work of art.
I love that. That's a really interesting thought on the thing. When I was writing these questions up, I listened to them. Have you listened to the musical before?
No, I never have.
It's wild. It's Matt Smith who did Doctor Who. Like it's a very weird show.
Can't wait.
I was like, what can I use to prep for this interview? And that felt right. With both that story and this story, there is this like intersection of sexuality and horror. What do you think why do you think that always crosses?
Oh, I would say I think it always should cross, but but doesn't always, and I wish it did. For 1,000 reasons. Like fear and desire really are like two sides of the same coin. I grew up reading Anne Rice, and you look at like we had our big vampire phase. I kind of hope it comes back. Yeah. Maybe it is with Renfield but like there is so much that can be done with death and sex and fear and, mortality and immortality. And, Maeve is a character too, that in her way, I wanted her to sort of be like a bit of a vampiric or even like on the other side, like a Michael Myers type figure. Is like, she just sort of exists and is, and you get the sense that she probably will endure for a very long time, just the way she is. And I like that with the sex aspects too, all of it. It's just kind of thrilling.
At the start of every chapter of this book, there is a fly on the page. Did you get to decide where that was put?
I can't remember whose idea it was initially. I want to say it was my idea, but I'm not totally sure. But what was my idea was, oh no, it was my editor's idea. Please, if she's listening, don't kill me. But what was my idea was moving the fly around the page. And so the designer ended up choosing exactly where it was. But I liked the idea that it would have movement throughout the book.
It's a very cool visual element to the book. Now, for my final question, I know you're a Trekkie.
Yes.
And as someone who is a newer Trekkie, I haven't gotten to interview someone who's doing horror and is into Star Trek. What crew would you want to put in like a true horror story?
What crew from like
any show, any grouping of Star Trek characters?
Can I take from different shows?
Yeah, if you want to put together your own crew, I really want to hear it.
Oh man, it's really like, how could you ever pick a favorite though? I mean, I think, okay, so I started on original series. Everybody in it's amazing, but for me, it was always the banter between like our main two, and I love the idea of a Kirk and Spock being part of the crew. Kirk is like the one captain that could never, ever be a part of a crew, not as captain, I feel. So yes. Like he just like that ego is just like enormous. So I guess he has to be my captain. Although I don't know, maybe my first choice captain would have been like, I love Cisco.
Cisco is mine just because like, who's the wizard character that always plagued Picard? Was it Q is his name? When he shows up on DS9, Cisco just decks him. I'm like, that's who I want on my team.
That's very true, actually.
Beats the shit up. I was like, yeah, that is the energy I want to see.
Very true. I mean, I don't know. It's like I love Wesley Crusher. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I mean, he narrates, I think, some of Joe Hill's audiobooks, as does Janeway, which is so sick. Yeah. There's like this like really weird, almost like unknown. I mean, people know, but intersection.
I love audiobooks. And I saw your who's narrating yours? Someone.
Josie Bacon, who just starred in Smile. She's awesome.
I'm very excited. I have to reach out to Tor to give me that. Because there's a whole other element with the audiobook.
Yes, I think it's very important.
Have you gotten to listen to any of it yet?
Well, not like officially. Sosie's texted me a couple clips like from the studio, but it's crazy. Like the first time I ever saw her in anything, I pay attention a lot to voices. For some reason, that's what sticks in my head. And I was like, this woman has the best speaking voice I've ever heard in my life. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I'm so thrilled and excited that that's Maeve's voice now.
Awesome. That is really interesting. That's what you focus on.
Yeah, it's really not that useful actually, because when you meet somebody, that you've met once before, it's like you're going off visual cues. But we all try our best.
Well, thank you for joining me today. When this book will be out on June 6th, you have other books coming in the future with Tor as well?
Yes, theoretically, June of next year and June of the following year.
Sweet.
Theoretically, but we're in edit stages with the next book.
I'm very excited to hear that. Is there anything else anyone should be picking up from you in the meantime? Any other projects you're doing?
I really don't have anything else out. Otherwise, I would say so. But
pre-order this.
Yeah, pre-order Maeve. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. It was wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you. It's been so fun.
You can find us at gatecrashers.fan for all of our reviews, interviews, all that good stuff, and more. See you soon.